Thanks for joining us again on a Family Through Service, V2VG podcast, video podcast. It's been a while since I kind of screwed that up a little bit.
Yeah, this year you have been pretty much on.
Yeah. So we're we did have an Odenek video planned for today, but a situation outside of our control came up, and we're doing an audible.
We are, which isn't usually our best. But we had already planned on being here and doing this, so it wasn't quite the mind splinter, the brain splinter that typically would be.
It's more minor, yeah, I can say.
So
we actually talked to our BIS, the treasurer, Jen, and she gave us an idea to talk about the conflict, the war that's happening in Ukraine right now between Ukraine and the Russian Federation, and yeah, I think we should.
Yeah, I think so too, because I think, it's here and now, but we can, as combat veterans, we can relate certain aspects of what happened in Afghanistan to what is happening here or not happening, so to speak.
I think part of the issue is that the statistics and the numbers we're getting out of Ukraine and the Russian Federation are skewed because neither country is going to be accurately reporting at this time.
Well, and the thing is, too, both countries, like America and China, are very propaganda savvy. So, there's videos that come out and then reports come out on those videos. And then a day or two later, when the investigation happens, they find out those videos aren't completely accurate or those numbers aren't, So that is definitely a part of the problem with the here and now and technology being so readily available.
But the good thing with technology being readily available is we do have eyewitness accounts, video accounts of things that are happening, and the advantage of Ukraine being a relatively industrialized country is it's not quite the same as Afghanistan in the situation because the common people have internet access, they have cell phones with video capabilities and stuff. But I did find an organization online, CFR, Council on Foreign Relations.org, it's a global conflict tracker that's giving us an estimated numbers.
Well, that's good.
On some stuff, which, estimated numbers are better than no numbers at all.
And, it's good if it's coming from an outside source,
That's what
we've talked about that with Americans and COVID and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you have sources coming from just from Russia or just from Ukraine or just from, the CDC, you're going to have obviously biased numbers. So.
Yeah, and so the Russian Federation's not reporting the casualties, but the Ukrainians are. So there's more, there's more than 50,000 casualties in the Ukraine from 2014 to 2021, which has been the conflict between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. I don't know how many there have been since the invasion of Ukraine from Russia, but I do know that according to CFR, there's been roughly 1.2 million refugees fleeing Ukraine from February 24, 2022. We know that as a number because those are the people going through checkpoints.
Yeah, well, and the only place to go is Poland.
Basically.
Realistically, Russia kind of controls the other 3/4 of the border.
Well, Belarus to the north, Crimea to the south. And so it's definitely tough. And $2.5 billion has been in security assistance has been committed to the Ukraine since 2014. But we've also paid a lot to the Russian Federation too. And I was talking to somebody earlier who was a little bit more skeptical, and they said, when President Biden shut down our pipeline and other things, and this is a non-political, I'm not getting into whether it's a good idea or a bad idea.
Yeah.
Just the fact is, when we became less energy independent under this current administration, we buy a lot of fuel from Russia. So in many literal senses, we are in that way financing the Russian Federation's invasion of the Ukraine. And that kind of sucks.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, why are we talking about this? Why is this important? Well, because the here and now is, as we know, as you being a combat veteran from the Army and me from the Marines, war is all in or nothing. When you try and, pardon the language, pussyfoot around things, that's when people get killed. That's really when innocent people get killed.
And there are.
And stuff. And we've seen that in Afghanistan. We've seen it in most wars post World War II. But we're seeing it here from people or organizations and countries that are not even involved, like the UN and the United States want to do these sanctions. But how much is that hurting Russia, and how much is that actually helping Ukraine? So you have to look at both aspects of it. You know?
And the other thing is, how much is it hurting the Russian civilians? Because it's not just a double-edged sword; it's a multi-edged sword.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also heard, in 2014, Russia took control of the Crimea region from Ukraine. So this has been an ongoing type of thing, and Russia, by all accounts, doesn't want to control the Ukraine region. They want a puppet government in, like they did with Belarus. Yeah. They want Zelensky out. But I don't think that they realized that Ukraine was going to put up such a resistance that they are. And the Ukrainian people are putting up a hell of a resistance. And not just their military, their people.
And civilians. And the politicians are backing the people, which is unheard of in today across the world. I mean, the fact that the politicians are authorizing and financing regular civilians, whether it be house mothers or whoever, to have firearms and ammunitions to stand up and fight for their land, their home.
I was laughing huge. Because it was like in the State of the Union address from President Biden that just came out. It was in the same fucking address. It was basically, Americans don't need semi-automatic ARs, but congratulations to the Ukrainian people for getting fully automatic AK-47 civilians to defend their country. Like, what kind of disconnect is that across the world, where the world can cheer the civilian population of a country for getting arms, fully automatic
weapons, which are weapons of war,
which are literally weapons of war, not weapon of war adjacent like an AR-15, a weapon of war, fully automatic. And the AR-15 platform, which is semi-auto, and trying to equate it with, what is the deer going to wear Kevlar? First of all, the Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting, A1. And A2, what does a 30-round magazine have to do with body armor? Nothing. Like, just the mental gymnastics are astounding.
And it is. But, we have our mental gymnastics that we do in our conversational ADD.
This is true.
But so back to it's all or nothing. So So if we look at the fact that we're putting these sanctions on Russia, and we're taking away the opportunity for the country to make money, how is that helping the Ukraine? I honestly don't. I haven't seen any anecdotal evidence that it helps the Ukraine. I know that on one end it hurts finances of Russia, but it also is driving Russia into the arms of China. And I'm not sure that we want Russia and China to be, the enemy of my enemy type situation.
Right. Here's another thing. We're hitting Russia, the Russian Federation, with sanctions. They're not really big sanctions, but they're adding up. Yeah. But we're not touching their ability to sell fuel. So we're still financing in some way, the world and the United States is still financing their war effort by paying for their gas. And I don't know about you, but I've noticed gas prices going way up.
Yeah, and it's funny and interesting you say that, because I read a story that gas prices in Russia are actually lower than they are in the United States right now. Well, which is a little frightening.
They are fuel independent, and Russia is one of the biggest countries in the world. It might be either right behind China or above China in landmass, but whatever. But I mean, it's not hurting. It's not assisting Ukraine. It's punishing Russia. but it's punishing the Russian civilians. Now, I know that we're sending, increasingly we, the West, and other countries, the NATO countries, are sending the Ukraine weapons and supplies, and at first we weren't. But, I mean, is it too little too late, do you think?
Well, you know, we had had a conversation before, and what this reminds me of is actually the beginning of World War II, and not the beginning of the United States being involved, but the 1935 to 1940 aspect, where there were a lot of people from the United States and other countries going to France and England and becoming part of their armed forces, and we have people doing that. A lot of American citizens. 7 Japanese citizens went to Ukraine to fight.
I think it was 70. Yeah, even more.
Whether it's 770, I mean, the fact that especially
these are average, and these aren't Ukrainian foreign nationals or people with Ukrainian heritage. These are like if you and I said, if we were able-bodied enough and said, you know what, fuck it, we're gonna go.
Yeah,
and we're going to help the Ukrainian people,
especially a country like Japan that has been so war-torn pretty much all of its history between China and other things. But the fact that we I start to feel like we should give up hope on our youth, I hear about stories of people in their 20s going over there and believing in something more than the social media nonsense that's going on now. I
totally agree with you. And they're fighting. Literally, they're fighting for the freedom of people they don't know, and who Ukraine isn't an ally of the United States. They're fighting for the people.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
Not fighting for the government. They're fighting for the people. They're fighting for individuals. And there's a lot of ways to help the Ukrainian people. There's a lot of organizations out there, and I want people to be careful, because whenever something like this happens, there's scams out there. But I found this thing on Instagram, believe it or not, and it was really interesting. And it said, if you book an Airbnb stay in the Ukraine, and obviously don't go, the family who owns the Airbnb in Ukraine will get the money, and they don't have to provide any space
actual
for
services. Yeah, wow.
So I mean, me and Jen did that. We booked a couple, and they were like $10. We booked 2 nights, so we spent $20. We actually spent $60 roughly. We booked 3 places. One place they didn't get back to us, so they refunded the money. So it was actually like $40.
Yeah.
And I just wrote a note saying we're not coming, obviously, but we just want to help give you guys a few bucks to help you get some supplies and things, because it's got to be hard for them to get their supplies over there.
Especially,
how much does it cost for food and supplies, or maybe pay for them to escape?
And everything is cut off other than Poland. So, basically, we're not even talking about war supply, but basic food and water, those type of supplies too, for some of these people when they get to a certain age, and
they can't go, right?
And it's similar to natural disasters, so, Hurricane Katrina and stuff. These people are like so embedded. They have 4 generations through this. They're like, they just don't care. They're like, fuck it, we're not going. They are literally over my dead body type of situation, and I think that's
funny. Over my dead body, because I'm not going.
Yeah,
or they can't go. They might not physically be able to.
And there's that
There was
too.
one video. I don't know if you saw it. There's one interview with a little kid on a bus who got picked up by somebody, him and his mother, and they were taking him to the checkpoint in Poland. And the kid was choking back tears, and he said, I expected to walk for 2 or 3 days, all day long, to get to Poland. And they said, he said, but you helped us out and gave us food and stuff. And they said, well, where's your father? And he started choking back tears. He said, he stayed to fight.
Yeah,
and I think the age to fight is 18 to 60 in Poland.
I mean, are they really going to say no to somebody who's 15 and wants to fight? You know what I mean? Like,
not for their freedom.
And even if the government says no, is that going to stop someone who is determined to fight at that age if they're that headstrong?
And here, there's other things you can do in the battlefield, right? You can run ammunition, and even in our history, we've had that.
Oh yeah,
we've had even like 12-year-olds.
The medical field, right?
Yeah. You can run bandages, you can run ammo, you can do stuff, and there's a lot of ways to assist. But here's something that Chuck and I are very adamant about. Don't waste their time. Don't waste the time of the Ukrainian resistance Don't waste the time of the embassies. If you're going to go, you have to make sure that you're prepared to go and that you have all the proper planning to go, and that when you get there, you're able to assist with whatever you can do. Because if you get there and you're unable to assist in some way, you're taking time, energy, and resources away from people who really desperately need it.
And the thing is, too, right, is just like when you join the military on an open contract, you may have this speciality of doing a certain thing, but they're going to put you where they need you the most. And so you got to swallow your pride a little bit. If you want to help and they need you, carrying bodies from point A to point B so that they can be healed and whatnot, opposed to, running a tank, well, then that's what you do because...
That's what they need you.
Yeah, it's the way it is, know?
And I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes you have to swallow your pride a little bit. And that goes for... people who have it in their soul and their heart to go to help, but don't have the physical ability to do it. Think before you act.
Yes.
Because you can end up wasting a lot of people's time, and you'll end up with yourself with a lot of heartache and anguish when you get yourself ready to go and you're all ready, and then you realize, you know what, this isn't a good idea, and I don't want to hurt other people with my disability or with my lack of ability. And it's really tough because it's like my mind is willing but my body is unable, and it's definitely devastating.
And we did before we did video, we had an audio podcast where we talked about the impulses of TBI and PTSD veterans, and we need to cover that, but this situation is a much bigger situation than the things we've typically have dealt with, where we had someone who has had this impulse to want to help, but there are other, like you said, there are other ways to be able to help other than going there and being part of the fight. If you physically or mentally cannot help that way, you can put your money where your mouth is by doing the Airbnb or, whatever other, maybe buying precious metals from Ukraine or whatever it is. There's got to be things you can do to help.
That's right.
Specifically.
You sure can. There's a lot of ways. There's a lot of scams, but there's a lot of ways. And if you want to give to charity, go to like UNICEF or like NATO.org or .gov and things and find out official charities, as opposed to like Billy Bob's GoFundMe for the Ukraine.
Yeah, be careful the GoFundMes.
I don't recommend that. And I think we should do probably another couple of shows on Ukraine down the line. But another thing I want to mention before we sign off here is for folks to be ready, because Putin has put his nuclear forces on high alert, and he's kind of backed into a corner because of the resistance of the Ukraine. And, it doesn't take much. It only takes a spark to really ignite a wildfire that gets out of control. And
it, especially when you talk about people who are some unstable. I mean, he's a very intellectual individual, as was Hitler, but they get to a point where their mental capacity is broken because of their own pride or their own anger or whatever. But no, even though we're separated by two large oceans and we have Canada to the north and stuff, but anybody who's been paying attention knows what's been happening with Canada. I mean, Canada's kind of open for the taking right now with all the craziness there. So I think you're right, be prepared and make friends with people who are prepared if you don't know how to be.
It's very important. Befriend your neighbors, befriend those who are prepared. And from my perspective as a devout Christian, pray for the people of Ukraine, pray for the people of Russia, because the average citizen, there's people in Russia who
they don't know.
They're doing anti-war protests, and the Russian Federation put out a notice saying if you participate in anti-war
rhetoric,
activities, you will be arrested. They don't have the First Amendment like we do. If you are in Russia and you say that you're against the war and all this stuff, they will arrest you.
And there's a strong possibility that the being arrested is not going to be you being politely put in handcuffs and taken to. I guarantee you will end up with some bruises and
welcome to Gulag.
So But this is what a country that is ran by a dictatorship is what happens.
Basically, yeah. And so do all that, and you know, try to change your perspective a little bit, and be grateful that you live in a nation. If you're watching from the United States, I know we have viewers from other countries.
True, yes.
Be grateful that you live in a nation of freedoms, because some people don't. And you know, pay attention and be ready.
You said it best.
Thanks, folks.